Welcome to Pre-Shift, tidbits of wisdom for everyday service. My name is TJ Griffin, and I'm the corporate wine educator for Winebow. Please submit questions at any time during this webinar using the Q&A function. And let me introduce your host for today. Ron Edwards is the husband of one wife, the father of 5 girls, a surfer, a missionary kid, and some days, although not today, a fan of bow ties. He has over 29 years of hospitality experience, and since 2018, he has been the director of wine education for Winebow. And here to discuss today's topic, the first of the 5 P's of hospitality, the promise, Master Sommelier Ron Edwards.
Well, hello, TJ. Hello, everybody. So today we're going to talk about the promise, but we're going to do something a little different. Normally, the conversation is primarily between TJ and I, but there are going to be some case studies that we're going to bring up that really would be better served if we had some impressions from you out in the audience. You can put them into the Q&A, even though they're not really questions. We're going to sort of ask you, what does this say to you once you understand what the promise is supposed to be? And we're sort of evaluate your reaction to the way these businesses present themselves to see if maybe the promise matches up to what you would expect going in. So let's get started with what's the promise? So what is it? This is part of the 5 Ps. A good friend of mine, David Vermeesh, and I developed this in our consulting days in a way to help people sort of put in a box the majors that you have to deal with when you're going to consider running an opening or revamping a hospitality business. And so the promise is the first one because all the others hinge on it. Because if you don't understand your promise, as we called it in the 5 Ps, then you won't know how to promote yourself. You won't know what your property should look like. You don't know what kind of menu you should put together, which is the plate. And you definitely don't know who to hire, which is the persona. So as we go through these 5 Ps, everything is going to continually relate back to your promise. So this is really foundational. We may combine other thoughts, other Ps together in one of these webinars, but this one's going to live on its own, mainly because it's so foundational and so important. So what is the promise? Some people would call it expectations, but I think it's more than that because your promise exists whether you try to make it exist or not. Your promise, in best case scenario, is going to define what the guest thinks you are offering. It's going to define what the guest expects while they're with you. And it definitely is the definition of who you are as a business outside of your 4 walls. We mistakenly assume that the promise that people have in mind of what we're going to offer them is contained within our 4 walls. But if that's the only place it lives, then how do people know they're supposed to come visit us? How do they know that they're going to enjoy what they have and on offer in your business? And more importantly, how are we going to manage their expectations in a way that sets us up for success as the provider of the services? Meaning that if someone sees your name or just wanders into your space and they're looking for a hamburger and you're a vegetarian restaurant, that's an automatic mismatch. I mean, that's an extreme example of I didn't communicate my promise very well. And so now I have guest disappointment. But it can come in much more subtle ways as well. Everything from the length of time someone should expect to eat there, to what they should dress when they come in, to the way that the menu is put together based on their personal flavor profile. And what it becomes, and perhaps more importantly than anything else I've said so far, is that this promise that defines what the guests should expect, that defines what the guest should think you're offering, becomes a vector. TJ, do you remember from your math classes what a vector is?
It's direction.
Yep. Direction and magnitude, right? So when you're talking about a promise in the hospitality industry, what you're talking about is giving the guests an absolute direction of if they join your party, so to speak, this is where they're going and this is what they're pointed to. And that is ridiculously important because it also then sets the direction and magnitude of every other decision that runs the outside and inside of your business. So let's get on to that a bit more.
Ron, is the promise, it makes me think of a mission statement. Is it different from a mission statement? Is it the same? Is it an alternative to a mission statement?
Even the mission statement even would start to evolve out of a promise conversation. So you sit down with you, or you sit down with your partners, you sit down with whoever's involved in this business, and it's super important that you figure out what you want people to think about you. And the mission statement's closely aligned, and it should be an extension of this thought process of coming up with your promise. They're not completely separate, but they're not exactly the same thing either. The promise is more, it's even a more global view perhaps than the mission statement would be a good way to put it. Like, this promise is this umbrella that everything comes from, including the mission statement, including, because it's my own terminology, it might not connect directly with the way people think about it. But just hang with us for a second. So one of the most important things to realize is your promise of your business exists already. The question is it sort of an oops, accidental, this sort of happened thing, like the car in the screen, or was it by design? Did you think through it sufficiently at the very beginning of your business, or when you revamped your business because you realized it didn't have a great promise, to make sure that what people think about you before they ever have an experience inside your building is already defined? It's a very difficult task, but you can't do it. You can't take the action towards pushing people to I know who you are before I show up, unless you've decided who you are. And then you communicate it, right? So we can't have an accidental promise. The accidental promise may already exist, and you may have to work against it, because whether you like it or not, people already have an expectation of what they should get or receive or experience inside of your hospitality business. The question is, did you give it to them, or did they make it up on their own based on what they saw, what they heard, what their neighbor said, what the website gave them the impression of? Where did they come up with it? And as often as possible, we need to make sure that we've decided exactly what we want people to experience and what we want to promise them, and then move through all the steps to provide it. So we don't want accidental and unintentional promises to be in people's minds about our businesses. When a potential guest entertains your business and they already have that promise in mind, we have two options at that point. If their promise happens, if their version of the promise is our promise, then it's very likely that we will meet their desire and they will leave as a very happy, fulfilled, this was a great experience, I'm going to share it with all my friends. If they have one of these accidental promises in mind, or these unintentional promises in mind, then their desire isn't going to necessarily match up with what you're offering. And one of the most common things for people leaving a hospitality experience unfulfilled is that they came in with the wrong expectations to begin with. And that's our job as the people who dreamed up the business, and the people who talk about the business, and the people who run the business, to make sure that they have proper expectations before they come in. If you have the wrong promise in their minds, they're going to have an average to a bad experience every time. If you have the right promise in their minds, they're going to have a good to great experience every time, because they're already ready for what you do. And that's who we want inside our doors, people who are already ready for what we do. How's that hanging in with you, TJ? Am I getting anywhere near something that makes sense?
Yes, it's I get the concept. It's a very interesting concept.
And that's what it is. It's a big concept, and then there's a whole lot of action that happens afterwards. So, this is where I would love everybody who's out there tuning in right now. This is where we're going to point you to the Q&A. I'm going to pull up a slide. I'm going to pull up 5 or 6 slides. I can't remember exactly how many they are, and they're all businesses. Many of them you already know what they are, and I'm going to just show you a snapshot of what they're presenting to the world. And if they have a tagline or a statement that they've associated with that image, I'm going to read it to you, and then we're basically going to banter back and forth between TJ, myself, and those who are willing to put their submissions in about what's this promising us? What, as a guest, what are we expecting when we come into this situation? So basically what we're now moving into is somebody in these businesses tried to come up with what I would call a promise. And then now we're going to look at what the public facing first impression of this is if you're just doing an internet search. So this is part of like their promotion. We're looking at their promotion side, but we're trying to see what we think their promise is. Does that make sense, TJ?
Absolutely. I'm ready.
All right. Well, here's our first one. Everybody ready? Here we go. All right. Not an unknown name, right? Not an unknown business. So we have Spring Hill Suites by Marriott. There's your picture for you. There's your imagery. They have a pretty simple tagline: a little extra, a lot less ordinary. A little extra, a lot less ordinary. From this picture and those few words, what's the promise that I'm expecting when I get there? What do you think, TJ?
I'm trying to. The picture makes me think one thing, and the tagline makes me think another.
Okay, delve into that a little bit.
So the picture to me, this gentleman here is checking in or out. I think he's traveling for business. It's just for a night or two. He's packed light. It's not a lot of luggage. So this is a slightly nicer, casual business travel hotel. Better than average, better than your basic stuff, but not a full scale. This is when you're in and out of the city in a day or two.
Okay.
A little bit extra, yes. A lot less ordinary. I don't know. I guess it's a little modern in design. I'm not sure where they're going with that part of the tagline.
Yeah. Okay. So a little extra. Let's look at the picture. If you're talking about the quick in and out hotel for moderate range business travel, does that look like the lobby that most people get when they go to I'm only going to be here for one night and I don't have a large per diem for my hotel stay?
It's a little, it's a little better than that, I guess. Some thought went into the design here.
Yep. There's definitely, they're definitely trying to create a very modern, clean sort of expectation, right? It's clean lines, it's modern, it's round shapes. It's look at the mix of people they've decided to put in their imagery, right? The front desk clerk is one, right? So you have, counting the front desk clerk, you have 5 males and 3 females. All the males appear to be dressed for business, right? I would say the females are, they could be in business attire. They could be like heading out to just enjoy the day attire as well. There's someone in the Q&A, David has asked, how does one define ordinary? And to be sure, ordinary is actually comforting for some. Yes, absolutely. There are some hotels who are trying to push the idea that this is your home away from home, right? Which makes it feel a little ordinary. Matter of fact, there's one that's named Home to Suites, right? It's like, oh, like I'm just going home. Well, that doesn't appeal to me. Why do I go to a hotel? If that's your promise to me, I'm like, no, I don't think I want to go there because I want to go to a hotel and not feel like I'm at home. I want the opposite experience. But that's a good question from David, and good, important. A little extra, a lot less ordinary. Okay, so I think that they're trying to pull the picture here as the lot less ordinary concept, that this lobby sort of is giving you a promise that when you go to Spring Hill Suites, it's going to be modern, it's going to be hip, it's going to be fresh. Now, I've been to a lot of Spring Hill Suites because it's one of my preferred in and out stays, TJ, and they don't all look like this because they're not all owned by corporate, but they do maintain fairly clean lines, and they are a little extra, in my opinion, for the price that you pay. You get a little extra space in your room. You get a good working space if you need to work in your room. There's almost always, they have a refrigerator. So if you want to keep your own beverages because you're there for a couple of days or whatever, they definitely offer that. Any other impressions before we move on to our next one? Thank you for the comment, David. Krista, I'm waiting one for you. I see you hanging out there. And Jonathan, we can have some comments from you too. Of course, you may be driving and listening, in which case don't do that.
You would agree, Ron, that you think, based on your experience, that they do your interpretation of their promise and their promise are aligned. You had a good experience. You have.
I think that they do a pretty good job with their promise nationally. I was a little surprised, I will admit, by this picture on the website. For the national website, this is like Marriott.com, click on Spring Hill Suites as a brand. So they're always going to put their very, very best foot forward in that regard. And I have been in some Spring Hill Suites that are this level, and I've been in some that were renovated a while ago that aren't this level. So this is apparently their new up and coming lobby design. So it just depends on how old the hotel is, really. But the room configuration is the same everywhere. And it definitely gives you a little extra, a little less ordinary, and goes from there, including the bed choice. They have intentionally chosen like some pretty nice beds across the country for not so big a cost kind of experience. There's no like concierge service. There's no, bellhops. There's none of the frills that you get at a fancy hotel, and they're not promising that. And you picked up on that right away with the image. So I'm totally okay with that. So let's try something more local. What do you think? Let's try something from right here in Richmond.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So the name of this business is Taza Kitchen. That's their front page. Here's what they have on their About Us page. If you found this intriguing enough to click About because you'd never been there. Inspired by trips to Baja, Mexico, and the Amalfi Coast, we fell in love with traditional wood-fired cooking and the casual, welcoming environments where we enjoyed memorable everyday meals. From taco stands to small family-run wineries and pizzerias, strangers treated us like old friends, and the food and hospitality was special. Much of what we have learned comes from these travels and experimenting in our own backyards. We love the rustic yet simple flavors of wood-fired cooking that elevates fresh ingredients and tried and true favorites to something unique. All right, so let's analyze this one a little bit. So Taza Kitchen.
I can smell this place right now. Like
fabulous. What does it smell like?
It smells like a wood oven, that comforting wood fire smell, and the pizza cooking, and I can feel it almost. And it would be, I'm not in Richmond and we're in COVID times, but if we were not, and I would love to be there today because it's cold and rainy and gray outside where I am. So this would be a great place to go for afternoon pizza, maybe a glass of wine.
Sounds good. Actually, next time you're in Richmond and we're doing something corporately, I'll make sure that that's where we eat. They have more than one location, although this About Us doesn't make you feel like they have more than one location. And I'm glad that I think they would be thrilled with your reaction to this photo and their descriptions. What's the other side of this that they're trying to get you to pick up on?
That they have this beverage program that they're pretty proud of.
Yeah. Serious libations. Who knows what that means, right? I mean, there's no meaning to that because that's really an independent analysis, right? What's a serious libation to me? What's a serious libation to you? What's a serious libation to Desiree out there in our audience today? I don't know what it is to her, but they're going to at least prick your conscience with this idea of, you come here, we're going to give you a really great libation, serious libation, give you options. What are they actually trying to say? Now, what's interesting is what they end up with in the plate concept for this, that they have an unusual wine list for what is, a multi-unit concept. They don't have just the standard large-scale wineries. They do have Vino Verde. They do have 3 different Albariños. David is commenting now that indeed, as opposed to a frivolous libation, right? Yeah. So what would be a frivolous libation? Yeah, that's a good question. I like libations that are frivolous. but that's a good point. So anyway, the idea, I think they're trying to, I kind of get the feeling that maybe they're trying to weight the beverage program to the level of seriousness with which they approached their food layout. Perhaps. Maybe that's why they use the word serious. But it sounds like from my perspective and your feedback, TJ, that they've hit the mark on what they want you to expect when they walk in the door from this fairly straightforward but well thought out picture.
Well, I have two questions about this photo. First off, I would have maybe included a glass of wine, as if one of the customers is drinking wine, one's drinking cocktails.
Yep.
I want that food, but I don't want it with this probably rum-based citrusy drink that's in the middle
looks,
there.
Looks like a Mai Tai.
Yeah.
But what are they telling you about their beverage program from the picture? I totally understand what you're saying, and I don't even disagree with you. I would like to see a glass of wine here too, because they put a lot of energy into their wine program. But what are they actually saying through the picture?
That they have a great cocktail program.
Yeah, that's what they're saying is you can come here and eat and have a great cocktail. And that might have something to do with their environment, right? Like not every town in America has great places for highly driven quality cocktails, right? So maybe they're trying to pull in the Richmond audience and saying, this is a place where you can come for a crafted, carefully made, hand juiced, whatever cocktail just from the picture. Everybody can have wine, but we have a great bar program. And maybe that's what they're trying to say. It is a little contradictory to the effort that they put in their wine program.
It also makes me, it sort of answers a question I had earlier that I was going to ask you later on. Because when I think of the promise, I'm thinking, okay, it's the cuisine, it's the decor, and that's already been decided. And now I'm running the beverage program, so I have to match that up. And I was going to ask you, does the beverage program have a separate promise than the rest of it, or is it all tied in? It looks like they've made a couple of promises here that are tied together.
Yeah, if you remember when we were talking about building a wine program, and for those of you who haven't listened to those 3 episodes, please go back and tune into them on Winebow YouTube channel playlist pre-shift. There's 3 episodes there where we talk about building beverage programs, specifically wine programs. And I firmly believe that in the perfect process, the promise is very clearly made and then followed up on in every aspect of what you offer the guest, including the beverage program. So in this particular case, it could be that whoever took these pictures thought the coloring and the prettiness of the cocktail on the table was what the eye candy that was needed for the website, right? And that the glass of wine looked too stagnant or it was too tall for the dishes around it, because this is more of an art-driven photo. But at least it gets us to the point where we know we're going there expecting what you brought up, right? Wood-fired pizza, right? Oh, and tacos too. Oh, look at all this really great, casual, fun, delicious, I could go there anytime kind of food. So, David's going along with us in that, how can you talk about libations without wine or beer? And I think that it really boils down to what can you put in this picture without making it look crowded? Right. And I think adding those other beverages to this picture would have ruined the art of the picture. And so then you have to lean on getting their attention here and pushing them somewhere else within your promotional world. It also, I think that they've, we feel pretty good about this wood-fired cooking serious libations in relationship to the About Us paragraph, right? The About Us paragraph could be a little shorter. It could be a little longer. Everybody does it a little differently. What I think is interesting is how the 2 businesses are juxtaposed, right? We have Marriott International creating brand, and they have a little experience with that, right, TJ? They've created some brands, and you see where they headed with theirs, basically 5 words. They figured if they can't communicate this experience in 5 words, then they haven't defined the experience clearly enough. And I would agree with that. You should be able to define your promise pretty quickly. So here we go. Now, this one should pique some interest. If you haven't ever stayed at Ritz-Carlton, I hope you get to at some point in your life, but the Ritz-Carlton is almost a monarch of a brand. And this is not their front page that takes you to a picture of a snow resort right now because they're trying to get you to fly someplace. But when you click on, the Ritz-Carlton, as in its website, this is the first page that pops up. So here you have this picture. You have a very intentional text that's the gold standard. It's not a fancy text. It's not an overly modern text. It's a very clean, elegant text that you might see in antiquity of sorts, not like ancient English text or whatever. But all right, so get that impression, and now it's important to listen to this. I think their motto is what really most people remember. So I'm actually not going to start with it because it's the second thing they list. So if you click on the gold standard on this webpage that you see, it says the credo: the Ritz-Carlton is a place where the genuine care and comfort of our guests is our highest mission. We pledge to provide the finest personal service and facilities for our guests, who will always enjoy a warm, relaxed, yet refined and ambiance. You have to say ambiance if you use the word refined. The Ritz-Carlton experience enlivens the senses, instills well-being, and fulfills even the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests. The motto: at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. This motto exemplifies the anticipatory service provided by all our staff members. All right. Where do we go with this one? David, I see your hands up, but you just got to put it in the Q&A, whatever it is. What do you think, TJ?
I bet the lobby is a lot different than the Spring Hill Suites lobby.
Yeah, I bet it is. Just based on that one door that you're looking at there that's 12 feet tall and 6 feet wide.
Well, when I was a young, wet behind the ears sales rep in Boston, there was 2 Ritz-Carlton hotels in the city, and I had them both as accounts, and they're both very different. One was a newer one was the older one, but they both had that. This is definitely a very strong brand and a very strong promise.
Yep. And having stayed at a Ritz-Carlton more than a couple of times based on, events being hosted there. So that's where I was staying and living a little bit of a falsified, luxurious life when I was a consultant. They live up to this most of the time. So not only have the key to the Ritz-Carlton's promise is the motto, and they are maniacal about staff training. They put so much effort into making sure that the promise translates down to the persona of their business. And it's very admirable. They start ahead of the game because they invest in the property at a level that they have nowhere to go but up from there, right? Because the base level of the lobbies and the rooms and the banquet halls and all of that stuff is she for sure. But that's where they're trying to live up to it. So I think that they translate it here. The Ritz-Carlton is always trying to make you feel like you're in the middle of something that's tremendously elegant. They don't really do flashy. They kind of like understated. They like that quiet, regal feel. And, that is kind of epitomized in that we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. A kind of a call, it's a standard of behavior just from that one simple sentence.
And what's interesting, and I've never really thought about it, is this promise and this image and everything here. This isn't talking about a specific kind of cuisine. It doesn't promise you anything specific about the beverage program that you might enjoy in the hotel restaurant. It's just talking about the level of service and commitment so you can expect that will carry through to your other parts of the hotel. Yeah.
And really this, when I put up the hotel pieces for this conversation, this is really more about separating the idea of the businesses and hospitality. So this one's really about, this is a hotel first, and all that other stuff is amenities of one form or another. So David's chimed in and brought up the idea that, they're plush and very customer focused. and that, this has an appeal to people who value status and personalized service. Well, yes. And David, I haven't met anybody who travels who doesn't actually value status and personalized service at some level. And what they're promising is that if you walk through our doors, we're going to grant status and personalized service to you, no matter where you came from or what you normally do in regular life. We don't ask that question when you get here. Certainly, if you are given to the concept that all of this just basically represents snobbery and old-fashionedness, then this place isn't for you. You're probably going to pick something like the Ace Hotel or one of the maybe one of the Kimpton properties that's plush but sort of edgy. So this is definitely targeted at somebody different than what most of the Kimpton brands would approach, and so that's good feedback. All right, so let's go here. Here's a common one, right? The Capitol Grill. This is like not the very front page that they have right now on their website, because it was advertising something else. So I went back to the next slide, which is really about who they are. And so take a look at that while I read this. From the moment you step into the Capitol Grill, the experience is one of comfortable elegance. African mahogany paneling and Art Deco chandeliers provide a warm, stately setting for our nationally renowned dry-aged steaks, fresh seafood, and acclaimed world-class wines. With service as gracious as it is attentive, we look forward to impressing you. The next thing they mention is their menu philosophy, which I think is, I'll mention it, although we should be able to get their promise right out of the first paragraph. It is our sole desire that everything, and we mean everything, that arrives at your table at the Capitol Grill delights you. To that end, we use only the finest, freshest ingredients, masterfully prepared in recipes designed to engage all of your senses. There you go. How do we feel?
Well, those steaks look fantastic first.
They do look ready for me to put on my grill here at home, which is what they're pushing at the moment based on our current scenario.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I would be nervous to cook these myself because I'm afraid to ruin such a nice piece of meat. I don't feel as confident on the grill as apparently you do.
Well, I won't say I haven't ever ruined a steak, but I do pay a lot closer attention to the high quality meat when it shows up at the house. All right. So I'm going to just say this, and hopefully no one from Capitol Grill is listening, or if they are, they can just take it for what it's worth. Doesn't make me feel anything like I feel when I walk in the Capitol Grill. So I feel like their website is a disconnect from their promise. It's got similar colors, but it feels, for the first thing you land on, it feels too functional and not communicative in a way of like, where I just got to find out more about this. And it may be that they've established themselves as a brand so well by this point that people don't go there looking to find out what Capitol Grill is, and they really do wish for the function. They may have done a customer survey and figured out that this is what their customers want, is an immediate functionality. I would like to have a bit more feel in what I'm getting when I go to the Capitol Grill. I think that, what do you think about the words they use to describe themselves?
Well, I thought the words were exactly what I do picture at Capitol Grill. The dark mahogany wood and that just deep comfort and muted lighting, and that I was going to say that I thought that this doesn't communicate that well. It's a great comment on that.
Yeah, and David, your impression is correct that this is COVID right now, and so their website is pushing the idea that you could buy our steaks, take them home, and grill them yourself. That's what they're actually offering, because they also know that they could cook them in their own facility and put them in a to-go box for you, but the chances that you travel back to your house and they live up to billing after being cooked at the restaurant, not so great.
Does not work.
Yeah. So it's a little bizarre at the moment. I think that this is reflective of our current times and the difficulty that the restaurant industry has been placed in due to COVID restrictions nationally. And, so I'm going to give them a little bit of a like, okay, I see it. I understand this is hard. But they might want to talk to their website design people and see if they can do something a little more Capitol Grill feeling when you hit it.
Yeah, I think because we are in COVID times, and but I think, and I am not a marketer, or I don't know what I'm saying, so anyone listening should take this with a huge grain of salt. But if they had some way to say it, that you can take a little bit of us home with you and have a little bit of that Capitol Grill feeling at home, that I would relate to more.
It's not translated here quite as well as they wanted. I know what they're saying, but it's very direct, and it doesn't have that feel of warm, stately, that the feeling in their words is not translated to this ad that they're using to try and stay in business, to be quite honest. So I don't blame them for needing to be in business. I would design that differently, but I'm not a design professional. And while I've helped my former consulting partner with the marketing imagery and so forth like that for feedback, he's the one that developed it all and all that. And I was hoping he would join today, but I don't see him on the list. All right, so let's talk about this one. This is our last one. So if you're getting Nancy out there in the audience, we're getting close. This restaurant is named Mateo. All right. TJ, what do you think they serve before I read you the About Us page?
It looks like it might be Italian food. Rustic Tuscan Italian food.
Rustic Tuscan Italian. Okay. All right.
So, no, I see something over here on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Those Marcona almonds.
Yep. Sharon's saying it's a tapas restaurant.
I missed out on that.
Nice call, Sharon. Yeah, those are definitely tapas balls. I mean, certainly you could go to an Italian experience, family style, right? Which could be these bowls, and certainly Italians serve salumi, which is broadly put in front of you there. If you're really identifying cheeses easily, the cabrales that's there in the corner is definitively Spanish, but you'd really need to recognize cabrales on site, which is not the normal person. Okay, so here we go. Mateo Bar de Tapas is the first solo venture from Chef Matthew Kelly of Vin Rouge, housed in the old Book Exchange building in the heart of downtown Durham. Featuring a menu that blends the flavors of Spain with beloved ingredients and dishes of the South, we offer a casual yet refined menu of Spanish small plates with a Southern inflection. Accompanying the food is a robust Spanish wine list, as well as one of the largest sherry offerings in the country. Who's ready to go eat at Mateo?
I am. And I love that they said sherry.
Yeah, and they do have an incredible sherry list. I've eaten here about 5 times. Every time was great. So first thing that I want to point out is they're trying to build themselves as a tapas restaurant, and Sharon immediately typed in, it's a tapas restaurant. That's a good start, right? That you're going there just from the picture expecting to share things, because if you don't like to share, that's definitely the wrong kind of restaurant for you. What does it say about portioning? What does it say about variety in the picture? Out there in the audience, can a vegetarian eat here? It's a good question, right? Does the picture give us the impression that a vegetarian could show up here and eat and not be like starving? A pescatarian, yes, says Sharon. Well, actually, if you look to the right, you've got Brussels sprouts. No, I'm sorry. Those are Padrones peppers. So that's vegetarian. Right in the center is garbanzo beans, which is most likely vegetarian. Right below that, assuming they didn't put any kind of anchovy paste in it, is the tossed olives are probably vegetarian. Off to the left, you have Marcona almonds. As long as you're not vegan, no, I think that the little croquettes there, I think those have country ham in them, if I remember correctly, but they could be perceived. And then you have the rest of here, the cheese, but the rest of it, you'd have to be okay with dairy. So there's definitely an intentionality of the items that they put here. Some are like identifiable as tapas, like the anchovies that are down there, or the sardines. I think those are sardines. And then the rest of it is there for prettiness. Like, right? Does this look like a place you have to dress up?
No, you can be casual here.
Yeah, totally. Come as you are. We don't have tablecloths, right? Etc. All right. So, and from the description, what do they definitely want you to expect when you walk in? They're absolutely promising you that if you come here to eat, you are going to drink Spanish wine,
Yeah.
right? And we're going to at least try to get you to drink some sherry. Otherwise, they wouldn't have. Exactly, Krista. That's exactly what you're going to have. Small plates, Spanish wine, and sherry. And having been there multiple times, every time I've had exactly that. There's always something interesting in the sherry that, I admit that I'm not the world's biggest fan of sherry, but when you have something that's beyond what I can get other places, like really unique sherry, I'm definitely going to try it. And they always have super fun Italian selections. They dig deep into what's available to make sure that you drink Spanish wine and eat tapas. And I think that they've nailed their concept. And by the way, if anybody happens to be in Durham, make sure you go there. I don't know if they're open right now. It says they're open. This is their current website. And what else would you expect from this? Is this a place? This is a good question, I think. No, well, no, probably not unless you actually know, except that the bottle to the right is a bottle of sherry, David, and the glass to the left is a pour of Fino, most likely. And so, yeah, to the unpracticed eye, that might not point out, but it is definitely intended to again say, you come here, you drink sherry. What was I going to say? Oh, is this a place based on what you see in front of you? Is this a place you take your friends who have hearing issues? Maybe they have a hearing aid, and you are taking them out to dinner. What do you think, TJ?
I think that they are not going to enjoy this place as much. It's going to be very loud, lots of conversations going on, glasses clinking, plates moving.
Yeah, they have they have a communal table in the middle, if I remember correctly, and it's hard floors, hard tables, and it's meant to be, that sort of boisterous atmosphere. So yeah, exactly. I can't say the acoustics are bad. I was always able to talk to the people at my table without shouting. But I am sensitive to this now because I'm now older, and background noise in restaurants really makes it hard for me to concentrate on other people's conversations, to the point that I often am staring at people, have no idea what they're saying, and I just smile. So if I'm ever out with you, TJ, and I'm just smiling and haven't responded lately, you'll just know that I can't hear you anymore. Now, I don't think that will be a problem with you because you have that radio voice that permeates, but nonetheless. All right. So after that great discussion, and I really appreciate the participation from our audience, because I think that really showed that I hopefully picked out the right things. And what I've decided to do is I'm going to come back to these images and these restaurants as we talk about each one of the next P's, so that we're talking about the same things and we can point out in them where the promise is being fulfilled, or at least aimed at, right? So the key here in a summary is that the promise, you have to build it right if you want it to work long term. This bridge in front of you was built many, many hundreds of years ago using engineering that we might consider old now, but it worked, and it worked really well. The design is great. The care of attention is great. They didn't build it very fast, but they built it right, and it still stands. When you are considering your business, even after your business is already functional, it's okay. Go back, spend some time on what you want to promise people, and make sure that you're doing the things to fulfill it. But build that promise into everything you do right after you build it. And you'll have a much more successful time entertaining people who show up at your door and making sure that they are being fulfilled by their expectations because they match what you're offering. There we go.
All right. So that was the first P, and that's one of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the second P so we can look forward to it?
Well, next time we'll see if we can cover 2, but we're definitely going to cover 1. We're going to cover promotion. which is how you talk about your promise to the outside world so that people can expect it when they get there. And the other would be property. And that's how does your property look in regard to what you're promising. And we covered a little bit of that today as we talked about the promise to point out the things that were being shown to us in these pictures. But we'll hopefully dig a little bit deeper into that next week and point out some things that are speaking to us as outsiders, right? Because we don't know what those people that built those businesses that we are looking at today, we don't know exactly what they thought in their head the promise was. We came up with our own. Now, in an ideal world, they matched. I think for Matteo, I think our impressions matched beautifully because having been there and multiple times, I've gotten the same experience every time, and it's exactly what Sharon put out. Right, I'm going to have Spanish food, Spanish wine, and sherry.
Join us for that next edition on February 9th at the same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That will be our default Valentine's Day episode.
There you go.
It's the closest we're going to get.
Closest we're going to get.
Well, thank you, everybody. Come back, tell your friends, catch up on YouTube for any episodes that you've missed. And until then, stay safe and thanks for coming.